Hello everyone, welcome to another online tutorial. Welcome to my channel. This is Stitches by Antonia. So today we're going to be cutting a princess that bustier. A princess that bustier. As you all know, princess that bustier is not really hard. It's not really that hard, but it's simple. So what I'm doing now is I'm marking out my chest line, which is 9 inches, my bust line, which is 11 inches, on the bust, which is 13 and a half, and my waist, which is 17 inches. So I went ahead to mark those all through and go the line, as you can see me doing. So after I finished ruling the line, the next thing I went ahead is to label them. As you can see, I was labeling my chest line, my bust line, my under bust, then my waist measurement. So this is how I labeled it. So the next thing I went ahead to do is that I went ahead to mark my nipple to nipple measurement. Nipple to nipple measurement, which was 7 inches divided by 2, which is 3.5. Then I added half inch of allowance, that is 0.5 inch of allowance, which is 4 inches. So I marked out my 4 inches down from the chest line to the waist line. So after doing that, what I went ahead to do is that I went ahead to mark my shoulder. I went ahead to mark my shoulder. So the shoulder I'm making use here is 8 inches, which is 16 inches divided by 2, which is 8 inches. So as you can see, I went ahead to mark my shoulder and I marked it on my chest line. Then I rolled it all through. So after rolling it all through, I then went ahead to mark my neckline. At this point, I used 3 inches by 3.5. So I made use of 3 inches by 3.5. So now this neckline will depend on you. You can use your desired neckline. It does not need to be just like my own. So it can be any neckline of your choice, whatever you desire. But I used 3 inches by 3.5 inches. So after marking my neckline, I also went ahead to take my shoulder slope, which was 1 inch. I took shoulder slope of 1 inch, then I connected it all the way to my neckline. So after connecting it to my neckline, the next thing I went ahead was to mark my midpoint. So remember, I was having 9 inches. So after I took away half inch, 1 inch, sorry, for my shoulder slope, I was left with 8 inches. So that 8 inches divided by 2, which was 4 inches. So as I marked my midpoint, from that midpoint, I went in by half inch, that is 0.5 inch, and I connected it to the shoulder. So after doing those marking, the next thing I went ahead was to take my dart. On the waist area, I took 1 inch on both sides. On the under bust area, I also took 1 inch on both sides. Then I connected it. So after taking my dart on both ends, I went up on my bust area. I went up by half inch and went down by half inch. That is 0.5 on both ends. Then I connected it. Now at this point, if you don't have this curve ruler, you can make use of a freehand. It is all your choice. You can make use of a freehand. If you don't have a curve ruler, it is not necessary. But while you are making use of a freehand, please just connect it properly. So after connecting it properly, you can see I'm trying to get that princess dart on this side. So now at this point, I was trying to get which part of the ruler I'm going to use. Oh, I turned this ruler. Hey, I was trying to get what part of the ruler to get that perfect shape. I turn and turn and turn the ruler until the angel ministered to me and say, "You this girl, oh yeah, use this side. Just use this side. Just use it." You understand? I turn so just cool down. When you're plotting this, you need to be at ease. Find the perfect point of which you desire, which you know that yes, this thing is okay. So me, I did my own. Oh, I turn and turn and turn and turn. I was like, which part is good for this thing? Which part will make this thing come? I said, shey this thing is not too big or this thing is not too small. But at the end of the day, the Lord ministered to me and I was able to get the perfect point, as you can see. Chai, you know that point where you get confused and you don't know what to do. You understand? So that was my situation at this point. I was just trying to get okay, oh, where do I start from? So after getting my desired curve, the next thing I started taking was my bust measurement. I started taking my bust measurement, which was my bust was 38 inches divided by 4. 38 inches divided by 4, which was 9.5 inches. So 9.5 inches plus 2 inches of that I took in there, so which was giving me 11 inches. 11 inches, I end up adding extra 2 inches. So on my waist area, my waist was 34 inches. So 34 divided by 4, which was 8.5 inches. So 8.5 inches plus 2 extra inches for the darts, which was 10.5. So 10.5 inches, I ended up adding extra 2 inches for my allowance. So after doing the markers, I went ahead to rule a straight line. Then I remember I had to connect my remaining curve. I didn't connect my curve all through. So I went ahead to connect my curve. So after connecting my curve, the next thing I had to do was that I had to, because after cutting, when you end up joining, you tend to get reduction at the bust area. So what I did was that I went in by 1.5 inch. I went in by 1.5 inch. So before going in by 1.5 inch, I took half inch on both sides. That was half inch upward and half inch downward for my dart at the armhole area. So after taking my half inch, people usually use 1 inch, but I use half inch. So I went ahead, to connect the lines again. So after connecting the line, I then went ahead to take in my added 1.5 inches allowance at the armhole area. Now this is for shortage, so that after cutting, when you're joining, you end up having a reduction there, so that will help for the reduction. 1.5 inches. Now you can take in 1 inch, you can take in 1.5 inch, it is all your choice. So after taking in my 1.5 inch, then I reconnected my armhole. Then after doing that, what I did next was I'm done. So you can see this is how simple this princess that is. It is not the karama is not plenty. Let me put it like that. The karama is not plenty. There's nothing add there. There's nothing add there. Now the way other people call their princess that is very different. Some cut it the same way as this, some don't cut it the same way as this. It is all different. So you just need to know what works for you better. So anything that works for you better, you just have to do it. So this was how I cut my own princess dart. And you can see, voila! It's as simple as that. So the next thing I need to do is, I start cutting. The Holy Spirit led my hands. You get, I was led by the Holy Spirit to start cutting. So I ended up cutting it. So this is how we cut it. So this was how it looks like after cutting. So this is how yours will look like after cutting if you follow the method. So you can see it, Abby. See, so when placing on your fabric, you need to cut the center front on fold, so you just have only one pair of it, sorry. Then the side front, you need to cut it in pieces, so you have to cut it into four. As if you are using it for the lining, if you are using the same fabric for the lining, you have to cut it into four. But if you're not using it for the lining, if you're using a different lining, so you have to cut it two pieces on both fabric. So after doing that, we need to put that aside. The next thing we're going to do now is to cut our back. As usual, we need to rule the same thing we did. We need to rule our shoulder, our underbust, and our waist. So after ruling the lines, so the next thing I did was to take in my zipper allowance, which was 1 inches. Now you can use 1.5, you can use 2 inches, it all depends on you, but I'm making use of 1 inches. So for my zipper allowance, so after taking my zipper allowance, the next thing I did from that line of my zipper, I took in my nipple to nipple measurement, which was 4 inches, as you all know. So I rolled it down. So after doing that, what I did was to take in my shoulder measurement. I took in my shoulder, then I marked my shoulder slope. After marking my shoulder slope, what I did next was I marked my neckline. So I just connect everything together. So for my shoulder, I took in 3 inches by 2.5. I took in 3 inches by 2.5. Remember, for the front neckline, I took in 3 inches by 3.5. So I did the same thing, just reduced it by 1 inch. So after doing that, I connected my shoulder. So I connected my shoulder like this. Took in my shoulder slope, connected the shoulder slope to the neckline. Also, I marked the midpoint of my shoulder, which was 4 inches, and I went inward by 0.5 inches. So after going inward by 0.5, the next thing I did was to taking my dart at the waist area. So at this point, instead of taking in 1 inch, I went in by ½ inch. So I took in ½ inch on both sides for my waist, also ½ inch for my underbust. So I connect lines together. Please just look at what I'm doing and just follow it and you get it. So at this point, remember that time that I was trying to position my hand for the front. Now when doing that for the back, what you need to do is that the back does not need to be as curved as the front. The back should not be as curved at the front. No, the back has to be just a little bit curved, but not as curvy as the front. Now remember, our back does not have a bust, just like our front. Our front has a bust, but our back does not have a bust. So at this point, what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to get the right curve for it, because I don't want to have pointy sign or bustier at my back. So I'm just trying to get the right curve for the back. So that was exactly what I did. So the next thing I started doing was I started taking my horizontal measurement. So my butt was 38 inches. 38 inches divided by 4, that was 9.5. 9.5 inches plus 1 inch. Remember, I didn't take in 2 inch this time, I took it 1 inch. So plus 1 inch of that, then I added extra 2 inches. Also, I went ahead to mark my waist area. So my waist was 34 inches divided by 4, which was 8.5. 8.5 plus 1 inch that I took out plus extra 2 inches that. Now remember, if you're marking this, you need to mark it from your zipper, not from your zipper line. You need to mark it from your zipper line. That is where you took in that 1 inch. So after doing that, I went ahead to connect my armhole completely to get that right curve. So as usual, after getting the right curve, what you need to do, you also need to extend that bustier. You need to extend it by 1.5 inches. Remember, so that you're joining, you don't have shortage of fabric. So even if it's after joining, even if you have excess, you still just trim. It's better to have more fabric than to have less fabric. So what I'm trying to do, I'm just trying to contour that side because I don't want it to be so curvy. I don't want it to be very curvy. So as usual, now as the spirit lead, my mind was just saying, this thing is curvy, this thing is curvy, this thing is curvy. I was like, hey, Father Lord, I don't want to have this thing to be curvy. So I went ahead to take another ruler and try to place it and see if I was actually getting the right curve. I tried and tried, but as the spirit leading me, I was just trying to find the right curve for it. Understand? So this thing is logical. You need to take your time. You don't need to be in haste when cutting this. Just take your time, please. Don't be in a haste. No one is perfect. Nobody is perfect. You just need to take your time when drafting any pattern of your choice. You just need to take your time. So after doing it, I'm done with the back fabric, the back pattern. Sorry. So the next thing I need to do is I have to start cutting as usual. So let's cut off a pattern. So this is us cutting it. So after doing that, just remember that I have to label. Please do not forget to label your pattern. It is very, very important and necessary. Do not forget. So after cutting it, this is what I have for the back pattern. You can see the back pattern is not as curvy as that of the front. You can see the front. See how curvy it is. You can see the back. The back is not curvy as it is. So thank you very much for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I love you.